If you are an atheist and you engage in arguments, no, let me just rephrase that. If you engage in discussions with theists, they are bound to come up with some common arguments. For example, the watchmaker argument, where they claim that if the watch is a creator, then something more complex like the universe should have a creator. The Kalam cosmological argument, where everything has a cause to begin, so the universe also has a cause for its beginning. Through this new series, I intend to debunk those claims one by one. Let me start with a very popular theistic claim. Imagine you are a person who believes in a god. When you die and reach pearly gates or any other entrance to the next world, you find out that there is no god, so you lose nothing. You were just wrong in your assumption. But if you find out that there is a god, then that god would reward you for believing in him and worshipping him. You will end up in heaven or Jannat or attain moksha. Now let's look at the other possibility. Suppose you are a non-believer and you find out after your death that there is no god. Then also you don't lose anything. But if you find out that there is really a god, then imagine the tortures that await you for not believing in him. Hell is waiting for you. You have lost an eternity of happiness in heaven. So it is better to bet that a god exists than to think that a god doesn't exist. You are likely to win the lottery if he does exist. So it is rational to believe in God even if the absence of concrete evidence for his existence sounds logical. I'm sure you have heard this argument before, right? Many people live their lives in the faith that hopefully there is a God above and that he will give them heaven and not an eternity in hell. And then there are people who live their lives happily without believing in a superpower up above in the clouds. But what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong about God's existence and he does exist? Let us deconstruct this form of thinking and see why this doesn't make much sense. Hello, I'm Anand and you're watching Pale Blue Thoughts, the channel which promotes scientific temper and debunks pseudoscience and irrational claims. This form of philosophical thinking was introduced by a French thinker, Blaise Pascal, in the 17th century. I'm sure you have heard that name before in your school days. The founder of the Pascal's triangle, Pascal's law, and the Pascal's wager, which is what we are discussing right now. He wrote a book, Pensees, a collection of philosophical and theological thoughts, which is considered a significant work in Western literature. Although a great mathematician, he also dabbled in philosophy, which was considered as the best way of knowing things back then. Now let us come back to his wager, popularly known as the Pascal's wager, an argument for a belief in God. Pascal didn't try to prove that God exists. He didn't try to prove that God's existence is more likely than not. Instead, he used an unusual strategy and said that if you look at the odds and the possible payoffs or returns that you may get, believing in God makes perfect sense. If a God exists, then you get high rewards. If you don't believe in him and he exists, then you get a lot of punishment. So it makes sense to believe in him than not to believe in him. This makes perfect sense when you hear it first, doesn't it? So let us see why this is not so perfect. The first question is, which God? Which God should you be worshipping? The God of the religion you were born into or the real God? What is the criteria with which you can establish that a particular God is the real one? There are around 4,000 religions in this world currently and tens of thousands of gods. Which one is the true God? Vishnu, Shiva, Ram, Yahweh, Jesus, Allah or Bombo? What makes you think that you are worshipping the right one and not the one you like? So if you are a Sanatani and you die and reach heaven and you find out that Jesus was the right God, are you ready to rot in his hellfire? Or what if you are a Christian and you die and find out that it was Allah who sent the last prophet to teach you how to live? Or what if you chopped off your itsy bitsy parts of your body only to find out that there is more than one God and shockingly realize some of them are women too? You're heading for hell of another God in that case. So if you're born into a religion, you just assume that the God which you have been indoctrinated with is the true one. Now what yardstick do you use to know if that is the right one? An old storybook? For someone who likes playing hide and seek so much, what criteria could you use to find out if the God you believe in is the true God? So believers, what if you are wrong about which is the true God? If you look at any God, he is not happy if you choose to worship another God. That is considered a big offense. The first commandment in the Old Testament says so, and this Quran ayat confirms it. So believing in a God is not enough. Believing in the right God is perhaps more important. But none of the gods have provided any evidence for their existence. So as a believer, you are doomed. Now the next point. If you're choosing to believe because you're looking forward to a reward after your life, then that belief is an insincere one. It has selfish motives. Don't you think an all-knowing, all-powerful God can see through you and your insincere belief when you finally get to meet him? Suppose a believer and I are standing at the waiting line to meet God. Besides me is a believer who believed without any evidence and believed a God just because he wanted the ultimate rewards. God might look at me and say, well, at least you said, I don't know whether I exist. At least you didn't believe the false one or believe just for the sake of getting selfish rewards. So what if he is impressed with my intellectual honesty and puts me in heaven? Point number 3. You being asked to believe in something without any evidence is like believing that Santa Claus really exists. You can't choose what you believe. You need to be convinced about it. Suppose I ask you to believe that Antarctica doesn't exist. Yes, I know you haven't been to or seen Antarctica, but can you choose to believe that it doesn't exist? We have many evidences that prove that such a place exists. You just can't believe in anything unless you are convinced about it. And conviction doesn't come because you were brainwashed into believing it or that you read it in a book. Actual conviction comes from evidence. And finally, here's my actual take on the whole argument. I haven't heard this one being spoken a lot about by people who have debunked Pascal Wager before. If you lived all your life believing in a certain God and following all his ultimatums and religious practices, and then you find out at the end that either he doesn't exist or you have been following the wrong God, you stand to lose out a lot of things. You have lost the chance to spend your money the way you wanted to do in this life, buying the dream car or going for that vacation. Instead, you have donated that money to build a church or a temple. You have wasted away all your life in a fear of an eternal torment, which you don't know exists or not. You have not enjoyed the good things in life because you feared some punishment in your afterlife, for which you have no evidence again. You have missed out on the chance to value everyone around you as equal. You have made life hell for those people who were born into the LGBTQ community for no fault of theirs. You missed several chances to build relationships with members of another community or religion just because your religion forbade you from mingling with people from that community or religion. You chose to forego meeting a lot of new people and making friends because you restricted yourself to making friends within your religious circle. You have lost the chance to better the life of humanity by advocating human rights instead of violating it. I mean, humans are inherently moral. They don't like things like war, slavery, and other human right violations. But fundamentally, religious people consider it as their duty to protect their faith and God through blatant violations against humanity, just because their God told them to. It's an irony that people often try to protect their God, whereas the God is supposed to protect them. You have prayed and fasted and attended religious services or pujas when you could have done something productive in life. You could have spent time with friends, family, helped someone, learned something new, increased your knowledge, explored the world, etc., etc., etc. You have foregone the chance to eat that super yummy beef fry or pork chops because you followed what your religion told you to eat or drink. You have lost the opportunity to occasionally let your hair down and enjoy socializing with your friends or co-workers over a glass of wine. You have lost the chance to wear what you want. You have given up on doing something good to the world because you wanted to and not because you have been told to by your God. I mean, doing something because someone commanded you to do and doing something just because you wanted to do it are two different feelings. Those who have done something good just because they wanted to do it would know that feeling. You have forgone the chance to sleep a bit extra on Sundays or enjoy a siesta on a Friday afternoon. I mean, I could go on and on about things that could have been done instead of kneeling down before a non-existent superpower. So as you can see, believers have a lot of things to lose if they blindly believed in their God and religion. This life is, after all, the only chance we get to do what we want. There is no evidence to a second innings in this match anywhere. So instead of making the most of it, why would anyone want to waste all the opportunities to live happily, free of fear, free from the fear of judgment and eternal torment? The decision is yours. After all, you have the free will, don't you? So to conclude this topic, Pascal's wager doesn't provide any evidence for the existence of God. It merely suggests a practical reason for belief without addressing the question of whether the God actually exists. And it asks you to place your bet on infinite rewards against finite payoffs. The argument is basically saying that believing in a God is your best bet even if the chances that a God exists is low. And as I have explained in this video, there is very little rationale to accept this argument. Firstly, there is a question of which God. Secondly, there is no practical importance for believing in a God just because he could give you infinite rewards. That is because if you don't truly believe, you're not going to get anything except a trip to hell. And lastly, you can't just decide to truly believe if you don't believe in something in the first place. And the most important of them all, you are foregoing enjoying this wonderful life just because you are living in a fantasy land. So there you go, Pascal's wager torn to shreds. It is better to believe something that has evidence than believing in something which has no verification. Enjoy the finite rewards in this life and live it to the fullest. Now if you really want infinite rewards in this life, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel, and do let me know your feedback about this video in the comments. I shall be back real soon with another scientific temper promoting video. Until then, stay skeptical.